Benedictus cor, quensium Dominum, querite Dominum, et confirma querite faciem eius semper. Confite in Domino et invocate nomen eius. Annunciate intelligentes opera eius. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sic ut erat in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. Benedictus cor, quensium Dominum, querite Dominum, et confirma querite faciem eius semper. Unam peti ad Domino, angequiram ut in habitem in domo Domini. Ut vidia voluntatem Dominoi, in protegat a templo sancto St. Paul wishes to see in the saints a certain dignity of comportment. He gives practical advice in chapter 4 and chapter 5. He wishes to exclude such discussions and behavior as would include fornication and impurity. Translate, watching a soap in our day is doing something of that nature. It is letting that be in the air, giving a mode of impure thought, giving a mode of impure speech, therefore in some way making it incoherent, that living of the Christian life in all its elements under the lordship of Christ, who is Lord of all, including our free time. And here he becomes very specific. The translation that we have here in the Jerusalem Bible is actually quite helpful, because the Greek is not easy, as we shall see in a second. So it comes through in modern terms thus: there must be no coarseness or salacious talk and jokes. All this is wrong for you. Raise your voices in thanksgiving instead. And then it goes on, But this question of the way in which we joke is something which concerns every member of the human race. It is something which causes problems in commentators, not only in scripture commentators but also monastic commentators, for this reason that St. Benedict condemns the words which provoke laughter, especially loud laughter. It is because he wishes to maintain this sacred dignitas within the ambit of the cloister. Though it is in letters something which is quite clear, that at least to behave in such a way that it becomes banal is incoherent. It has, however, caused a lot of ink to flow amongst commentators, because in the monastic life it is part also of charity to be able to create joy, and in practice not to use that extra means that we have to engage the lever of the wit is something which over a whole life can make a difference if a person is able to do it, and will never do so because St. Benedict would not wish that happen. And so they have found ways and means of trying to get under the skin and to see exactly what St. Benedict meant and did not necessarily mean. It has also been attacked in some detail by St. Thomas Aquinas, who has actually an article on this very word which is used in scripture here and which is the basis of the notion of avoiding certain levity. It is the word eutrapelia. Now in verse 4 of chapter 5 we have this, the coupling of morologia and eutrapelia. Now moron is our word thickhead. A moron is somebody who's dense, a dimwit, and morologia is some word which is foolish. So the scripture is condemning foolish chatter. Now let's see what that means. It expands it then in this next word, eutrapelia. Now St. Thomas Aquinas goes into great detail in this article which treats this virtue or vice, and he comes to the end of his long and balanced discussion indicating that the Lord of all has placed this ingredient within the human psyche, the capacity to be also joyful in wit and speech. Therefore, if it has come from him, it is, and he uses a powerful expression, like the beasts of the field, the wild animals, not to be able to raise oneself to its use. That is to say, it is to deprive oneself of one of the cosmetics of human nature which the Creator has given. And therefore, he classes it in the end as a virtue, eutrapelia, even though in the epistle to the Ephesians it is placed here as a vice. Now, therefore, we need to see what the word actually means. El means well. Trapelia is based on the root of trapein, it means to turn, and therefore conversation, versari in Latin is to turn, and con is to go round and round. Conversation is actually a turning around, and it is therefore a way in which we engage with other people in our ambit. We go in and out of them in words. And to do it well is to be a complete person. But in the mind of St. Paul, it is the pejorative use of it which is indicated, because he's coupling it with his other vices. And therefore one can only presume that he's referring to, now what? The great commentator on the scriptures is Zeruic, and he goes into every verse in the New Testament in quite a bit of detail. And this verse he analyzes, trying to indicate the various meanings of this word. Here it is. Eutrapelia. Trepo, the root, is verso, I turn. So versatilitas, there, the root is there. Someone who's able to be versatile. It's the same word. To converse easily. Has the easy use of the word. In Ireland we have the expression the blarney, or the gift of the gab. But what does it mean? In this sense, used here, where it's pejorative, it goes here, facilitas loquendi, facility of speaking, et jocandi, and of joking. But then it goes on, nimis atque indecens jocositas, an excessive and indecent jocosity, jocoseness, jokingness. So the excess is coming here, and that is precisely what St. Thomas would see, that it is all a question of order. Therefore, going out of order and turning things into another ambit which goes out of the order, for instance, in going in its own weight and then taking all with it, then the element changes from positive to negative. Now, I would like to go into that for a second because it's precisely what happens in much of our culture. It can actually happen in monastic culture. One observes how in communities where recreation is allowed, it's not allowed in the Trappist regime, but in communities where it is allowed, one notices that a community can not exactly be judged, but certainly gauged by the quality of its moments of legitimate recreation. A community which all the time is banal and emptily jocose, emptily, to the extent of being just in a state of levity all the time without saying anything serious for half an hour, is in one category. But a community which has this peppering of the conversation with the unexpected little twist at the end of a phrase, but actually is saying something useful in that half hour, is in a different category. Translating to our own existence in conversation. Are we making conversation? Now, if we are drinking coffee with a person, that moment can, by its end, have had an effect on the person's soul. It can also have been pleasant by this peppering of it through the unexpected word and the odd story. But if it remains on the level of the empty, then it has an empty effect and result. It is a waste of time. Now, if we then go into the realm of how, if we content ourselves with what's given to the common people, I mean those who have no grace, out there in the world, therefore switch on to a comedy which is pumped at us at the level of everyone, then we've got to take the consequences. If, on the other hand, as in the classical monastic and female Carmelite, for instance, regime, there was none of that, but it was done by the community, it's quite different. There's a cultivating of the healthy wit and jocosity, which is a healing of human life. I just conclude. Words are written, and it is told us in chapter 12 of St. Matthew, verse 36, I believe, or 38, that, maybe 38, we are going to be judged by every idle word. Now, if therefore we spend a lot of time just making conversation, although it's good to start by what is common with the other person, just to pass the time away emptily is not good on our copybook. For the Lord gave the model. The less one speaks, the more poignant are our words. The more we speak, the less we are heard, because people just switch off. And if one notices in conversation around a table, somebody who doesn't often speak, when eventually he does open his mouth, everyone will actually listen. A person just can't stop, they switch off. The Lord was in the category of those who spoke well and enough, and then let the word sink in with all the power of its lingering echo. Et in nomine Domini Dei nostri magnificabimus. À la mesure et sans mesure de ton immensité, tu nous manques, Seigneur. Le pauvre seul peut t'accueillir, le cœur brûlé d'attention, les yeux tournés vers ta lumière.